Okay, picture this. A kid gets a robot for his fifth birthday, immediately takes it apart to see how it thinks, and can't put it back together. That kid grew up, spent over a decade solving high stakes data problems in mining, the kind of world where one mistake can cost millions in a single day, and then turned all of that towards something a lot more personal. How our kids actually learn. Today's guest is Alex Jenkins, director at the WA Data Science Innovation Hub and the mind behind the TEDx talk, An AI Tutor for Every Child. We're talking mastery learning, the myth of edtech promises past, and what a Western Australian classroom might actually look like in 10 years. Let's get into it. Alex, before you got involved with the AI, you spent years working in mining and healthcare companies like BHP, Index, St. John of God. What did that world teach you about tech that actually works versus stuff that just sound good in meetings?
Yeah, so I've worked in technology and data science for a long, long time, and my interest in AI goes back to my childhood. I got a robot for my fifth birthday, and the first thing I did was take it apart to try and figure out how it worked. And I couldn't put it back together, so I ended up in tears. But I was always fascinated by the idea that you could make machines think. And I jumped around a lot of different degrees at university. I did, I was sort of trying engineering and computer science and things, but I also did a bit of psychology. And I ended up studying a degree called cognitive science, which is trying to understand how cognition works. And there was only a very small group of people who were interested in this degree. And eventually the university shut it down because there was not enough interest. And back then, studying artificial intelligence was a very, very niche thing. It was part of what they call the AI winter, where there was very little research money or academic interest in the field. It was a very niche topic. But the fantastic thing about that degree was that it allowed me to do philosophy, it allowed me to do psychology, it allowed me to do computer science, it allowed me to do mathematics. Um, you know, these are all things which I'm now eternally grateful that I did study, because they're, I think, an integral part of what AI is. But outside of university, I I started working in mining because it's Western Australia, and if you fall backwards, you'll land in a mining job. Particularly when I was a student, and I think I did that for a number of years, and I learnt about building software, and also building software in a way that is not just a technical spec on a page, but being with people who are out in the field every day. So, one of my most educated experiences in that respect was working on a mining site with a lot of geologists, and it was my job to manage and help build the software that the geologists would use. So we would live, eat, and drink together. We would spend 12 hours a day at work, and then we would go back to the camp and socialize together, go to the pub together, play sports together. And so you get to know each other very intimately. And it was a fantastic working environment, but it really taught me a lot about the mining process, and how it taught me a lot about how a lot of software, most software, is not built with the end user in mind. And so that really was very educational for me. I think on the educational side of things, I was always interested in what good looks like when it comes to technology in education. So there has been decades of people promising that technology was going to solve our problems in education.
Yep.
And I would argue that has been overall a bit of a disappointment. There hasn't been fundamental breakthroughs. And if you look in particular at Australia's PISA scores, PISA is a benchmark that sort of measures, uh, you know, school
Mm,
performance at a country level. Australia has been going backwards for 20 years, and um, we're worse at science and maths now than we were 20 years ago. And
mm.
that's profoundly disturbing for me. Um, that everyone seems to care about this, but whatever we do doesn't work. Um,
We're gonna get into that a little bit later. But tell
yeah.
me, Alex, mining and healthcare, they don't really forgive mistakes, critical industries, right? Was there
Mm.
something you saw going wrong in those industries that you carried with you, like, I'm never gonna let that happen again?
I worked in mining a lot more than I did in health. I think in health it's much more important, but in mining I saw a couple of incidences where in mining, when things go wrong in technology, it means that you can stop making money. I mean, if a mine site shuts down for a day, that can be millions of dollars in lost revenue.
That's right.
Um, I do recall one incident where we had software that tracked the trucks and where they were on the mine site. And it basically told the truck drivers where to move the material, the ore that they dug out from the ground and where to dump it. And without that software, they really weren't able to do much and didn't know where to dump their material or where to go to get the next load of material. Um, and one day that I was part of the team that was working on interfacing with that software, and I recall one day in the office sitting there, we're all just working away, and all of a sudden the guy jumped back and screamed and started shaking, and we all turned at him and said, "What's wrong?" And he'd deleted the main database, the live production database that was connected to the
Oh
trucks. And
no.
yeah, so we had to ring the mine site. We had to explain that their entire system, which drives the trucks around, had been taken offline, and that they had to make other accommodations while we figured out how to bring it back. It was a very, very tense couple of hours. Yeah.
Oh wow, I can imagine. Was there a light bulb moment for you where you went from solving data problems for mining companies to thinking, actually, I want to focus on kids and classroom?
Um, I think it was more, I've always been fascinated by machine learning and data science. Um, and actually, in the mining domain, there's there's a lot of really interesting problems that relate to using data and data science and machine learning, the precursor to artificial intelligence. There's a lot of problems that can be solved with that technology. But when I was in high school and university, as a bit of a side gig, I used to tutor kids in maths primarily. And I started to understand why a lot of students fail at mathematics, or at least don't excel in mathematics. And I believe it's because of how mathematics is taught. So, students, you would study fractions for 4 weeks, let's say, as an example. And then you would move into solving equations that involve manipulating fractions. But if you haven't mastered fractions and how to manipulate them, and it's not completely internalized conceptually, then when you move on to the next topic, um, it's going to get harder. You can't rely on that foundational knowledge. And when you study a topic like mathematics, it's like building a house. You, if you don't have strong foundations, anything that you try and build on top of those foundations will inevitably fall over. So there's a type of learning called mastery learning, which ensures that instead of learning fractions for 4 weeks and moving on to the next topic, that you learn fractions until you can get 100% in the maths test. It's not acceptable in mathematics to score 60%. if you score 60%, it means you don't understand it.
Hmm.
You know, you need to be able um, to score 100%. You need to be able to have mastery in a particular topic. And in the modern classroom environment, or any classroom environment really, we've never allowed that to work because it implies that students will learn at different rates, right? Everyone learns differently. And traditionally in the classroom, everyone learns fractions for 4 weeks and then everyone moves on. Now, it might mean that maybe a handful of those students have gained mastery of the topic,
Hmm.
but uh, inevitably there is going to be a cohort of students who haven't mastered the topic. And so what I would see is this compounding effect where students who sort of just scraping by in mathematics, by the time they get to year 9 or year 10, the concepts are so foreign to them, and they have no idea on how to approach things, and they can't they internalize that they can't do maths. They say, "I can't do maths."
Hmm.
So that was that really informed my journey into education. It was something that I was always passionate about. Like, what does good look like when it comes to educational material that students can understand?
So your TEDx talk was called "An AI Tutor for Every Child." If
Yeah.
that actually happened, and if every kid had one, what would that look like for a normal family?
Yeah, I think there's a few models. I think the way to look at this, the way to imagine this is a bit like a living textbook. You know, everyone gets their maths textbook, right? And they go home and they have to study the exercises. But imagine if the math textbook was able to create examples for you or could identify where you were struggling and would focus on those areas and could create visualizations. It could create extra problem sets for you. Um, it could explain things to you in a way that you understand, which is attuned to your learning style. Perhaps you're a visual learner. Perhaps you like to listen. Um, perhaps you like to build examples. We have the technology with artificial intelligence to create those kind of dynamic textbooks. And so what I think it would look like is something like what we expect when we see ChatGPT, but far more visual, far more um, uh, engaging and interactive. And we're building those things now inside the Data Science Innovation Hub. We have a interactive tutor that's driven by AI and a platform called AI Liftoff, which is a STEM education platform. And I think it's not just parents, it's teachers as well. If a student is learning in conjunction with an artificial intelligence, it becomes easier for the teacher to essentially ask the AI, well, how's little Johnny going?
Hmm.
One way to look at it is that every student has a virtual teacher's assistant. You know, some students have teaching assistants in that they have, um, you know, personal assistants if they've got learning disabilities or something like that. If a teacher had 30 learning assistants monitoring every student's progress and helping them, those assistants could report back to the teacher and the teacher could manage the whole class in that respect. I think that we're very close to that future.
That that is amazing. People have promised this before, right? Technology is going to personalize learning for every kid. It never quite deliver. What makes
No.
you think that this time is going to be different?
Um, it's because of how flexible AI became, I think, at understanding and being able to interact with humans. I don't think that we've ever had. I would reject the notion that says we've ever had a technology that was capable of tutoring in the same way as AI. Every part of, previous educational technology products, even if they're somewhat dynamic, they still don't really, they don't have a mental model of what you are thinking. Whereas AI is capable, if you get something wrong or you make a mistake in your thinking, AI is good enough to identify, okay, there's an issue in the mental model of this, how this person understands a concept, and then take steps to rectify that. And I think that that's the key part of AI that we don't, well, the key breakthrough. I mean, there are many breakthroughs with AI, but we've never ever had a technology like this. It's a dangerous technology in a way because it's a technology that allows you to replace your thinking entirely
Hmm.
and do your homework for you. But at the same time, when used correctly, there's never ever been a better technology to help you understand things. I would encourage all of your listeners, if you want to learn something, learn it with AI. AI can explain something, and if you don't understand, you say, I don't understand, simplify it, and it'll simplify it. If you ask it for examples, analogies, it's fantastic like that. It can walk you through steps. It really is like having a professor next to you. I just think back to when I was an undergraduate at university and getting stuck on particular concepts in some of the difficult units that we had. Um, the I would have to write an email to my professor, and maybe I'd get a chance to see him for 15 minutes. You know, like during the week, I'd have to wait a few days. Now that kind of technology is right at your fingertips. Yeah.
So here's what jumps out at me straight away, right? You talk about this being the every kid, regardless of wealth or location, but doesn't a kid need to have a decent laptop and reliable internet, just basic infrastructure to be able to use it? And isn't that a risk that actually widens the gap instead of closing it? Because people that already have the resources might get ahead, but people that might feel a little bit disadvantaged might fall behind.
Yeah. And it's true in this day and age, with the cost of living expenses, access to the top end AI models can be expensive for many people in the community. I think that this is a solvable problem. What I hope that we get to within Australia is that we treat access to this technology almost as a basic um, sort of, I don't want to say human right. I don't think that's the right word, but a basic infrastructure in the same way that we expect access to water, we expect access to power, we expect access to telecommunications, and we should expect access to the computational power that allows us to run AI as well. So AI is expensive. The top of the range AI models, they can be hundreds of dollars a month in subscriptions. I think what we need to focus on is the fact that the speed of the technology is increasing so much that if I look at a certain level of intelligence, um, a level of intelligence that AI models would give us 2 years ago, 2 years ago, that technology would have cost $100 a month for a subscription. Um, the cost of providing that intelligence has dropped by 100 times in the past 2 years. The cost has gone down 100 times. So what happens in reality is that the most expensive AI models are always the smartest, and they're constantly moving forward. But if you look downstream, if you look down at where, if you wanted to use an AI that was as smart as the state of the art 2 years ago, you could run that on your laptop or on your phone, and for a significantly cheaper amount of money. So there is hope that we can think about solving the equity issue. I think it's a very solvable problem through infrastructure in Australia.
It reminds me the battle of the iPhone 17 versus 16 versus 15. You can do exactly the same thing with an iPhone 13. you can still have the same output. But you talk publicly about the ethics side of AI too, right? Not just the
Yeah.
upside. What's the thing that actually worries you about putting this technology in front of a 10-year-old?
Similar to a few things, lots of things. I think the default way to use AI for a child will be just tell me the answer. And so that is a terrible situation because we'll end up with a generation of students who can't think. And if they can't think, then we failed them, in terms of their education. So it's actually reasonably easy to set up, and we've done this with our AI tutor internally, to set it up such that it won't just give you the answer. If you ask it a question, it uses the Socratic learning methods, where if you ask it a question, it doesn't provide you the answer. It comes back to you with questions, which will lead you to the answer yourself. I think there needs to be more research on what is the appropriate age to put the technology in front of children. I have a feeling that sort of from the high school years upwards, once a student has a good grasp of, of literacy and is able to write in a coherent way, that, the technology can provide significant benefits. I'm uncertain of what is the appropriate age to go down to. Within WADSI, we focus our the AI tutor sort of from about the age of year 6 upwards. And I suppose I have some concerns, for instance, that you may impede. You can't really use AI at the moment, the way it currently is structured, unless you have reasonable writing skills.
Hmm.
And the thing about AI is that, you can just write absolute junk and rubbish. You can type anything and misspell everything and barely put sentences together. It will still understand what it is that you're trying to ask. And that's amazing, but it does make you lazy. And I certainly think that is a risk for kids as well.
That's right. Back to WA reality, and in every classroom reality, teachers are already run off their feet. Is this something that gives them some time back, or is it quietly the first step towards needing fewer of them? And it's something that worries a lot of us. How do you even tell which one is turning into something? Like, are we being replaced, or as actually helping us?
No, you've got absolutely zero chance of being replaced as a teacher. There are two ways that this can go. One way is the idea that somehow the AI tutor sits there and is a teacher replacement. And so you spend all day in front of your computer. That ignores the reality that school is not just a place for academic learning. It's a place for social development, personal development, and emotional development. It's a place to learn about teamwork. It's a place to learn about following instructions from other people. It's a place to learn about interacting with your classmates and working together. So the way that I think the best model is, ideally, AI is a way that allows teachers to spend more time doing face-to-face or physical or interactive activities with kids. If you think about what a teacher does, how they spend their time, I mean, the preparation of lesson plans and class activities, for instance, I mean, these are things that have already been identified by the government, that teachers are overworked in these areas. And it does seem crazy to me that we are constantly reinventing things like lesson plans when, for much of our school experience, there are fundamental learning experiences. Like, in terms of learning fractions, there are some fantastic lesson plans out there on terms of learning fractions. And I don't think it's necessary for teachers to reinvent the wheel there. Not every teacher needs to come up with the best lesson plan for learning fractions. I think it's good that they understand how to do that. But ideally, we should be drawing upon the resources from the best in the world when it comes to these things. I mean, that's how the Khan Academy got started, right? Someone who was extraordinarily good at explaining mathematical concepts put his video, Sal Khan, put his videos on YouTube so that his nephews, he could tutor his nephews remotely. And he was so good at it that millions, literally millions of other students came to his videos because they were providing better explanations of what they were getting in classrooms. So I think there's a lesson there. We can save a lot of teacher time there. And that's obviously the focus of the education department's AI classmate. Also, I think a bit of a flip in the classroom model. I mean, a kid could work with AI interactively, one-on-one, with this AI tutor. They could do that at home. This could be part of their homework to do that interactive learning with the AI. I absolutely do not think that teachers will go away at all. I think that if anything, it's an opportunity for teachers to spend more time on physical activities, teamwork, and social activities within the classroom.
Okay, so if a parent came up to you after this and said, "Should I let my child use GPT or any other AI for homework?" What would you actually tell them?
I would tell them that as a parent, you should modify the system prompt and say that I will be using AI for homework. My student is 14 years old or whatever it might be. I will be sitting with the student whilst they use AI. And also try and use the Socratic learning method. Put this into the system prompt. I'd be happy to share perhaps some of these example prompts I can give you that turn ChatGPT into a better tutor. And they're only small things because what it does is it prevents students from just saying, "Give me the answer." And it forces ChatGPT into a sort of education mode. Um, Yeah, and I'd say as well, I mean, parents should sit with their kids while they're using AI because the AI can help them. I think once a child understands or a student understands how to use AI to help them um, with their homework problems, it's a very positive thing. I've seen that personally myself.
So you're always pushing for government, industry, and universities to actually work together on this stuff, and it's something that you're passionately advocating for.
Yeah.
Where's the working right now in WA? Is it working? Is it moving the needle, or is it just stuck?
Yeah, look, we have a lot of organizations who are very passionate about increasing innovation inside education. Um, we've spent all week, the Fogarty Foundation and the Forest Research Foundation uh, brought over an academic, Sarah Brackner from Oxford. Sarah Ratner runs the AI in Education. AIEOU is um, her institution. And that really brought together a lot of the Western Australian educational community. Um, I've spent time speaking with Elizabeth Knight as well from the Fogarty Foundation. One area that we both agree we need to see improvement is that we need validation. Like it's all well and good for me to stand up here and say an AI tutor is going to be amazing, but ultimately we need some evidence to suggest that that is true, right? You need to validate that claim. The problem is that doing research in a classroom with a learning technology has traditionally taken years. It can take a year to get ethics approval, but to test a new technology in a classroom. And in the age of AI, that is too slow. And what I'd love to see is the ability to move from, instead of us taking 2 years to validate a learning technology that works in a classroom, and there's evidence that it does work, I'd like to see that go from 2 years to 2 months. I'd like to see us come up with much faster ways of iterating and testing technologies to see what works in the classroom. I mean, we're trying to do that at WADSI as well. We have our AI education platforms. We go out to schools, we run incursions, and we see how the kids are using the technology, and things surprise us, and the way the things that work and the things that don't work. And we need to ensure that we're collecting data around those things. So within WADSI, we have a number of ways that we can do that. It'd be good to have a more systematic way as well. I'd also encourage, we need more people building stuff. There's a lot of people who are super interested in innovating and connecting, researchers with policymakers and educators. I think there's a lot of talented people who can build the software, but they need to be guided by people who understand education. And one thing that has become sort of apparent to me over the last year or so is that, it's okay for an AI to generate a lesson plan, but the AI is not quite at the point where it has the same judgment or aesthetic as a senior educator. An AI can generate a lesson plan, and an experienced teacher will look at it and say, well, that's not going to work. And they know. And so we need to be able to distill that experience into the artificial intelligence models itself, in terms of what constitutes a good learning artifact, be it a lesson plan, be it an interactive, visualization, or a YouTube video. I mean, what is it that makes Sal Khan's videos so popular versus another random video that introduces you to the concept of fractions? There's some essence, there's some quality to it. And the AIs are not yet capable of doing that. But I think that we need to be able to look at how we close that feedback loop for teacher experience, or good taste. Yeah.
You always remember your lecturer that had an impact on you. Always remember the first teacher, the conversations, and the way they dramatize the learning for you to give you the confidence, the self-esteem that you need to move forward and pursue your career. But what would actually take for WA to lead on this, right? Instead of just talking about this and wanting to really push the needle.
Yeah, so we could lead. We are a small enough and tight enough community that we could that we can act in unison. I think that the way that we can lead is that, like I said, if we get fast at validating a new technology comes along, and it's a new AI edtech product or a new approach to interacting, let's say it's a new type of AI tutor. If we can validate or invalidate that very quickly, test it, does it work? Yes, no. What was working about it? What's not working about it? And iterate on that very quickly, then we will, I think we have the opportunity to lead. If I'm a technologist and I've created something with AI, I probably don't have the relationships with school. I don't have the relationships with researchers to be able to test that technology. I think that we need an abundance of people who are great at technology, who have an interest in producing educational content or improving educational content. And then we need a way for them to quickly test their ideas in the real world. So that's something we're looking at inside WADSI. And it's stuff that it's the kind of thing that we're doing inside WADSI. And I think about, well, how could we do? But we have the advantage of already being in a university. The way that Elizabeth described this from Fogarty was as a educational accelerator. So I think there's some value there, and we might run some initiatives within WADSI as well. I had this idea of the education hackathon where we bring together 100 university students or startups who are very good at making software, and we group them with teachers who have a particular problem that they want to solve in the classroom, and then get together in a little group of 4 or 5 and create something and test it. The other thing that we're working on inside WADSI, which I think could really change things, is instead of having technologists create edtech products, we now live in an age where it's possible for educators to make software with AI.
Hmm.
And there's this concept of vibe coding where you can write software without writing any code at all, as long as you have a clear idea about what it is that you want. So we've developed a bit of an experiment inside WADSI, which is an operating system that essentially every piece of software is just made in real time by AI. There's no traditional software at all. And where I'm going with this is that essentially it is a platform for educators to make little widgets and interactive toys and educational tools, and instantly share them with other educators. With this tool, and we'll make this public quite soon, actually. Perhaps I can have another chat with you then when we're ready to show it.
That's exciting.
Um, it's really fun. It's the ability for a teacher to say, I would like to make a storybook generator that prompts children to write one sentence, and then the AI writes another sentence, and then the child writes another sentence, and then generate an image at the end of it. So fun little tool. Okay, you can create that in under 5 minutes. And if it works for you and it's good and it's fun, share it. And you just click it and it will give you a little 8-digit number, and you can give that to any other teacher in the system. So what I'd love to see is a platform that teachers can use to share the technology with the things that they make with each other. I think that what we see in the educational community is a set of, there are some teachers who are really passionate about this stuff and who end up making tools, but they don't have a good, easy way to share that with everyone.
Hmm.
And that could really make us world class, I think, if we have the ability to share, because it just accelerates our progress and teacher education as well.
Which leads me to the next question. All this exciting stuff, Alex, I'd really love to get my hands on it and just play with it and makes it fun in the classroom, not only for children, kids, high school, but also for adult education. You know, we still like
Yeah,
to play and we still like to have fun in the classroom, in workshops, right, in companies.
yeah.
So the question that I have for you is, you sit in the intersection of three worlds that all of them move at different speeds. You got uni, you got government, and you got industry. Where do you see the logjam?
I think the obviously when it comes to AI, government is always going to be playing catch up. Um, you can't get ahead on the policy side with AI. It's just by the time you come up with policy, it's you have to be very smart about it. I think the WA public sector actually has a very good AI policy in terms of it sort of gives enough room for people to experiment and be flexible with the technology. But if they try and deploy it into production in a way that could potentially impact people's lives, then there are significant reviews around that and safeguards around that. So it is difficult for government to do that, but I think we have done that reasonably well in Western Australia. Where is the logjam? You know, I think the problem is that we're not. I'm not seeing enough people experimenting with the technology to make things, to feed into this pipeline of researching the different ideas and and taking them into a classroom. The logjam is the connection between the researcher, the policy, and the educators themselves. But also, we need more raw material. We need more fresh ideas. We need more young people who are doing interesting things. We should make it easier for these people and lower the bar to entry to making educational tools.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about the future. 10 years from now, if everything goes the way you're hoping, what does a WA classroom look like that it doesn't look like today?
Yeah. Okay. What does the classroom look like? And I would argue it looks largely the same. Um, However, I see that the time spent, there is perhaps time where the children will be in front of their iPad or their computer doing interactive lessons on mathematics um, and other topics. But ideally, we see less time in front of the computer overall in the classroom. The classroom is an opportunity for social and interactive and um, development. So, in the ideal world, if this technology is as effective as I claim it can be, I'd love to be proved right in that sense, but we'll see. Um, I think there's an opportunity to make classrooms more fun and more interactive and more personable, um, with less time spent teachers writing on blackboards explaining concepts to students. Let the AI manage that stuff. Let's do the fun teamwork game stuff in the classroom. So that's the utopian vision, I think.
I love that. Um, if there is a 15-year-old listening to this right now, what do you want them to understand about the world they're walking into?
Well, that is such a great question because I ask myself that question. What is the world that we're walking into? Um, it's very difficult to predict the jobs of the future or the skills required for the future. If you go back in time, you go back to 1990, 35 years ago, not that long ago, and you sort of imagine if me and you were sitting here and we were talking about the internet, and I was trying to explain to you how it would be possible to discover, you know, any kind of knowledge that you wanted online. It'd be difficult to imagine that. Um, but it would be also difficult to imagine that one of the most popular jobs in technology would be that of a web designer.
Hmm.
Hundreds of thousands of people around the world employed as web designers. And that job simply didn't exist in 1990. The concept of the web was only just emerging. And the idea that it would even employ, millions of people is very difficult to think about. So I think, like the other technologies, the AI will also create new types of jobs. And I think that um, the way that we work with AI now is more like, as a software developer, I can work with AI more like a team lead, where I set the goals for the AI and I set how I want things to be tested and I set the outcome. And then I say to the AI, right, off you go and do it. And I'll send a team of agents will be fanned out to work on this problem, and they won't stop until they've reached this goal that I've given them. So I think critical thinking will be an absolutely essential skill, and effective communication. The best way to communicate with the AI is communicating in English. There's no this whole idea of prompt engineering that you can tweak your prompts to somehow get slightly better results, I think is largely a waste of time. The best thing that you can do is speak to an AI. When you give AI a task, do so in the same way as you would a staff member. Um, so I'm not ready to say that students shouldn't study computer science or they shouldn't study maths because AI is getting good at those things. We still need people to direct the AIs towards the problems that we need to solve. And I can tell you straight away, as um, someone who has a background in computer programming, I am going to be 100 times more productive with AI than someone who doesn't have a background with computer programming. Even though technically I won't write a line of code, and you might not write a line of code, but I know what it is that I'm trying to build, and I know the outcome that I'm trying to work towards. So at the moment, I think that these domain skills are still necessary. Um, what do I tell students these days? I tell them to follow their passion, but also to learn how to use AI alongside the skills that they have. I think that students if you're interested in medical research, but you also understand how to use the AI tools, you're going to be 10 times more effective at medical research. Um, if you're a psychologist and you understand how to use AI, you can be a better psychologist and a more efficient and productive psychologist. It's true for any field, any professional field.
Alex, in conclusion, what advice would you give to parents and what advice would you give to teenagers?
Okay, so for parents, I would encourage you. At the moment, I think that Claude is a fantastic AI. If your student is struggling with maths or science, learning, some particular subjects in high school, sit down with Claude and try and do a tutoring session with the AI as the tutor. Ask the tutor to act as an AI. Say, this is what we're trying to learn about. And ask it to make diagrams. Ask it to make interactive widgets that explain things. Ask it to explain things visually. And the more familiar you get with that, the easier it becomes. It is really a powerful technology in that sense. What is it that I want teenagers to know? I would say to students, don't have AI do your homework for you. Use AI to help you learn, because there is no more powerful technology that can provide learning assistance than AI. And I wish I'd had it when I was 15.
With that, Alex, thank you very much for joining me and sharing your insight today. Very valuable.
Thank you, Evan. I look forward. I'd love to do this again, and perhaps we can show you these platforms, and they'll be ready very shortly. We're almost ready to go with this stuff. I want to show you what it means to have a technology platform where educators can share knowledge. So thank you so much for having me on.